I was 13 years old when I played my first round of frisbee golf. Back then, I thought it was a simple, fun game that nobody really knew about. It turns out the only thing I was right about is that it was fun because it's actually played internationally in over 54 countries, and it's actually really in-depth and strategic and competitive, which is no wonder why it's so popular around the world. Little history on it. According to the PDGA, which stands for Professional Disc Golf Association, there's no real way to find out when it was first started being played, but we do know that the first patent for a frisbee was made in 1966. Tournaments were being organized as early as 1968. The first basket, which is kind of the target that you throw at, was the first patent for that was in 1975, and the sport wasn't really organized until 1974, so about 12 years after the first frisbee was made. And a little fun fact about that was a guy nicknamed Steady Ed Hedrick. He made the patents for the frisbee, the basket, and he was the one who created the organization of the sport and started actually organizing the first tournaments across the country. So he's kind of known as like the father of disc golf. And then just a couple quick like slang terms that I might use throughout this speech. Basket is referred to as the target that you're throwing at. So it's kind of like on a pole with chains that come down that catch the frisbee. Frisbees are referred to by a lot of people as discs. And so naturally, frisbee golf, me and my friends refer to it as disking. It's also been called frolfing before, which is like a mix between frisbee and golfing. So frisbee golf is going to be my topic, and just some things I'm going to cover over are the types of discs, what they're used for, and kind of how to play, so like different throws, some of the rules, stuff like that. And the goal is to kind of show that, discing is a fun sport once you understand how to properly throw a disc and how to play the game, and you get it a little more on an in-depth level. So as far as disc goes, there's kind of three main categories, I guess you could say, that each disc would kind of fall under, and each disc is going to be engineered and manufactured a little bit differently, so they do something different in flight. And those three main categories are going to be your drivers, your mid-ranges, and your putters, with the exception of there's some hybrid discs that can kind of go both ways, which is a little like kind of next level stuff. But so your drivers, first off, they're going to kind of look like this. They got a thick lip around the end, and then they're very flat on the top, so they can cut through the wind. And depending on what kind of driver you get, it might shank hard one way versus the other, or it might flip different throughout the flight. So that's your first category, is going to be your drivers, and they kind of look like that. The next category is going to be your mid-range. So it's going to look a little bit different compared to the driver. You can see the driver, again, has that thick lip, and then these kind of have a skinnier lip around the edge. And then if you kind of look at it from a side profile, it's going to be a lot thicker than your driver. That's because these are meant to go more straight with a little bit of give, depending on, again, which type of disc, which type of mid-range you're throwing. These are just generalized categories. So that's not going to go as far as a distance driver, but it's still going to go out there and relatively straight. So that's going to be your mid-range. And then the last main category here is going to be your putter, which kind of looks like the mid-range. You can tell it's thicker, and there's not as much of a carve out on the lip here. These will fly dead straight, but they will get nowhere near as far as your mid-ranges, and certainly not as far as your drivers. These are more for closer, I'd say within 50 yards of 50 feet of the basket or pin is also another term for it. That's when you're going to pull out your driver. They fly real nice and straight, and it's just used for controlled throws up close to the basket. So that's kind of your three main categories there for discs. So now that you know like about them, what they look like. I guess I've got to kind of go over, what they're used for. So driver, if you're familiar with golf, it's the same kind of deal. You're going to use it when you're driving off the tee pad. So this is going to be like on a distance hole. This is going to be the first one that you throw. And that's because you can really get the range out of them. You can get them to do a lot of cool stuff too in the air, like flip over and kind of cut around trees and stuff, depending on which hole you're on. So that's what the driver's used for. It's kind of be your first disc, or if you're just trying to shave off a lot of distance. And that's your first one you throw. So then the mid-range is going to be when you're coming in, I'd say within 100, 150 feet, maybe even farther back if guys have strong arms. That's when you're going to use your mid-range. And like I said before, these fly straighter. They don't do as much cool stuff as the drivers do. So if you're looking for like a longer straightaway shot, and you can probably get 200, 250 feet out of one of these, then that's what you're going to kind of use these for. And then I kind of went over it already a little bit with the putter. These just fly really straight. As you can see, there's really no give to them as compared to something floppy like the driver here. There's really no give to them, so they're meant to be straight, kind of bullish, head on, hit the chains and fall into the basket. So that's what your putter is going to be used for. So this kind of just shows that there's a special disc for just about every situation you can find yourself in this sport. And then, like I said, you'll find hybrids between a lot of these that you can use for different things. But that just gets really, really in depth, and that's not really going to be a part of this speech. Just kind of covering the basics. So now that we've learned, the three main categories of discs and kind of what they're used for, it'll be a lot easier to understand how to actually play the game, which isn't that difficult in and of itself. But this is significant because you don't want to just be throwing random discs randomly at random places. You're not going to have any fun. You're not going to be enjoying the game. I mean, you might have fun throwing them, but you're not going to be enjoying the game for what it is. So then basically how the game works is you start on a tee pad. It's just like golf. You have a certain number of par that you want to be in. So if it's a par 3, you basically get 3 throws to make it in the basket. So your first throw would be off the tee box of the driver, and then you could probably just sink it in with a putter depending on how close you get, and then you'd be 1 under, so -1. Same scoring as golf. You want to have the less number of points as possible. There's different kinds of throws. So backhand, especially for a driver, it's always going to fade out and then back to the left, unless you give it a little bit of like an angle when you let off, because then it'll kind of fly off to the right, maybe come back to the middle. There's the sidearm. When you throw it, it kind of always fades off to the right if you're right-handed, and again, you could give it that opposite angle to kind of see it flex during flight. So those are the main, basically 2 types of throws. And then there's out of bounds, which will add a stroke. You never want to land out of bounds. That's pretty much it as far as basic rules. But I mean, just off that information alone is enough to show that the game's not as boring or as basic as it can seem, because there's a lot of obstacles to go around. And it's a really fun game, I think. But it's a fun game, and it's complex with a variety of different types of discs you can throw that are used for certain situations. And it can get pretty fun and competitive with your friends. And that's just what makes discing fun for me. And more of an understanding how to play the game overall.